Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the 1.77 dev server to some tank previews. And there you can see we will begin right away with the M1 Abrams, and we can see the armor, the external thin armor, and also then some internal armor with some X-ray and so forth, and at the end also some test drive. And while I do this kind of as background footage, I will also run down some statistics, which you should take with a grain of salt because of two reasons. First of all, the obvious one, it is dev server. Everything is subject to change. It is work in progress. It's the first time that the dev server went live, so everything can, will, may change, whatever. The battle rating is still at 9.0 maxed out, and I think this shouldn't be the case, especially when we talk about the guns later on and some of the statistics. Then the second one is I received no golden eagles, and it was just too much trying to grind the tanks myself, even with the time 10 bonus and so forth. And so all the stats are stock without the influence of a crew. So the reload rate might change, turret rotation speed might change, horsepower will change, and therefore also the horsepower to ton ratio. But the maximum speed, the reverse speed that I went to test in the test drive, and all those other things might be fixed. I give you then also a comparison to the T64A that we have currently in the game in 1.75, as well as the KPZ 70. So here you can see the MRAC in the background, and the modeling of the tank is nice, the internal armor is nice. We will see how it plays out, we will see. And just in a moment I will give you a rundown on the statistics while some test drive is running. So while the Abrams is making short work out of the enemy in the test drive, let's have a look at the statistics. And we can see we have a 105mm M68A1 cannon, and as I said in my realistic expectations, it is an L7 gun variant, and 55 shots you have. The reload here on the stat card without it being in the crew slot, expert or ace qualification is 6.5 seconds. So that means we are actually on the lower end of what has been possible, and it is about to approach the, well, Victor's MBT's reload, to be honest. So I expect it to be much shorter with an expert or ace crew. 6.5 seconds, that is very, very fast. Turret rotation speed, again, 23.8 seconds. It can be around about 30 degrees when it is in an ace crew slot, I guess. So pretty nice handling. Gun depression is also very nice with -10 degrees and +20 degrees. And I think those are among the best stats, but again, you have the lowest caliber gun in this comparison. And as you can see here, we have no issues eventually going through the front plate of the T64A. And we also hull break here the SPA. The question is, of course, what will it be with the new T64B from later development stage, of course. So we are approaching him here in the test drive. I cut out the drive here towards it. Meanwhile, what I do here in the test drive when it's interesting, I'm shooting at the most heavily angled and armored slopes first, and then go towards the considered weak spot. And you can see the front plate here absorbs the AP-FSDS shell quite well. Later on I will talk you through how much pen it also has. It's not that bad actually, and we can see the front plate is eating it up, so that's an issue. And how is the turret front doing? Well, it's also absorbing it. So as you can see here in the comparison, all other tanks have bigger guns with the exception of the MX-30B2 Brennus or Brennu or Brennus, whatever. Yeah, the very interesting is also the KPZ Leopard 2K with the Rheinmetall L44. So nice shots here through the lower frontal plate. And we'll come to the KPZ Leopard 2K just in a moment. And there we can see also how it looks in the hangar. So I'm just looking at the hangar of the tanks from the beginning, how they look from the outside. So just the visuals. They might not change, to be honest, but the armor, maybe high hardened Rolls armor is very interesting here. It's just around about 50 millimeters on the upper frontal plate, but heavily angled, so that might deflect already some shots. But it's also the side, which is not thick. Surprise, surprise, it's a Leopard 1 chassis after all, if I'm not mistaken. The rear, the top is not that heavily armored, but what do you expect? The question is, how is the armor? And that is a little bit interesting on the Leopard 2K or whatever you want to call it. And also the battle rating is 8.7, and I hope that this will change, because this gun definitely would bring some power creep to it. Fuel tank should absorb a lot of stuff, but behind that is still an ammo rack, and the side is also protected by some spaced armor and again some fuel tanks. So it's really interesting how that will work out, but you can easily shoot below that. But there is also some armor protecting the engine but not the front, so that is really weird. We have also some spaced armor, composite armor here below the gun, but above the gun there is nothing. The side of the turret is also protected by some spaced armor. How effectively it will be, I don't know, I cannot tell you. However, you also can see that there are some ready racks, and every tank that I've tested so far has a feature that allows it to refill that ready rack armor once the gunner hasn't fired for, I don't know, 1 or 2 reload circles. And yeah, there we can see how it will work out in the test drive. I'm just able to test the heat shell, the heat FS shell, and it is absolutely awesome. It has 650 millimeters of penetration. That is more than the Lenkflugkörper SS11 on the Raketenjagdpanzer 2. Not the hot, but the first one. So this is like literally getting hit by a heavy ATGM. I think the only heat FS shell based or heat mechanism based shell type in the game that is better is the hot rocket on the Raketenjagdpanzer 2 hot, or the MX13 hot. Yeah, but it's not a one-shot weapon. You still have to aim properly, but it can penetrate everything quite literally. So we'll just see in a moment how it deals with the enemy. But hitting the tracks and so forth is not a problem. It still will melt through everything. So it's not really a contest. But what is really nice is, of course, the additional 20mm cannon, much like on the Kampfpanzer 70, mounted to the left of the tank with good firing arcs, and so you can defend yourself from aircraft. And yes, that was right through the upper frontal plate of the T-64A. Let's see how it does against the T-64B after we just finish off some ZSU 23-4, maybe not. So yeah, I just simply didn't have the time to go through the test drive, and that was even at an angle, shooting from a bit below through the upper frontal plate of the T-64B, which will be the Soviet top tier tank that we can see right now. So first of all, it looks much better with all the stuff on the back of the turret, and also the side panels being not there anymore from compared to its predecessor, the T-64A. And there is some additional add-on armor on the lower plate, also some upper frontal plate. It's not hardened, rolled, homogeneous armor, but still it is a little bit. And of course the secret is that there is some composite armor behind it. So the tank is still very well protected. SPA will have its sweetheart time penetrating it once the tank is not perfectly flat flat. Of course, the rear is something different, but I guess that's true for every tank. Maybe here at the bottom of the tank, if you have very good aim and all the time in the world and you are a bit distance away, that you can actually depress your weapon systems. So it's very well protected. And just in a moment, let's have a look at what all the fuss is about. The weapon system is very closely related again to the T64 B, no, the A version, of course. So there's also some armor radiation material. Maybe that increases the Russian bias factor, I don't know. Jokes aside, composite armor. There you can see, you can read through it for yourself in just a moment. The tank is everywhere very well protected except the lower plate, which is obviously the weak spot, and in the middle you will hit the driver, and left and right of it you will hit the fuel tanks with the possibility to also ammo rack it. So there you can also see this ultra porcelain, and those were the secret ingredients that were quite difficult to manufacture and also to hold in place while the molten aluminium was filled in, as far as I know, but they were highly effective against heat beams. And obviously everything has its boundaries, so how strong the turret is must be further tested, but that you can shoot through the hull of the tank with some AP-FSDS and so forth is something else. Yes, you have an additional heavy machine gun. So now let's talk about the mobility of the tanks in comparison. Again, there is a comparison to the T64A 1971 and the KPZ-70. However, the horsepower is still stock. So I hope you keep that in mind. So the M1 Abrams has a 1343 horsepower engine, and that gives it a specific horsepower to ton ratio stock of 24.7, close with the KPZ Leopard 2K. And yeah, all other tanks in this comparison are left behind in the dust, quite literally. Again, stock. However, you have a very good top speed of 72 kilometers an hour, and the reverse speed with 40 kilometers an hour is the maximum, again, that I could test in the test drive. Even when firing the gun, even when playing around with the settings, I could not make it faster in reverse. But actually, you know, that's not bad. That's really not bad. And you also have neutral steering. The Kampfpanzer Leopard 2K is in the same region, but very surprising is that it has not just a better horsepower to ton ratio. Okay, we still have to really test it out when those tanks are fully upgraded, how responsive the tanks are within a crew, and also how big the difference is here with the gas turbine on the M1 Abrams compared to the, I guess, diesel engine on the Leopard 2K. But the reverse gear is a bit disappointing. Now let's try it out, how strong the Abrams is when you shoot at it with the stock AP-FSDS shell from the T64B. And yeah, the upper frontal plate, as expected, is so heavily angled that it reflects the shot. And what about the turret? Well, you punch right through it. So, okay, that's an issue. And obviously that means that here we also can delete the cannon barrel and breach from functionality. What about the frontal plate? No problem whatsoever. Massive damage. 2 shots, the tank is history. And yeah, I guess the T64B is comparable with the stats to the upgraded T64A here in the stat comparison. And now let's talk about the Challenger. The Challenger 1, again 9.0 in the British tech tree, which is coming after the Chieftain Mark 10, if I remember correctly. And the lower frontal plate, 70 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor. Upper frontal plate heavily angled, but there is a big gap just under the cannon of just 60 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor. That is not looking good, like the turret front, also like the gun breech. that seems a bit obvious of a weak spot, and it's a huge target, like it's above a third of the hitting profile from the front, to be honest. The side obviously is also not that strong, but you might say maybe there is some composite armor behind that will save the tank. But to be honest, from what I have driven with, from how it feels, it's just a beefed up Chieftain Mark 10. And I've talked to some of my friends. They kind of tend to agree with me on this matter. The turret is strong, and there you can see there is no composite armor, and you have easy access even with something like a Panzer IV. Yeah, it's Panzer IV F2 can one-shot this thing from the front. I'm not making this up. It's again Chieftain and Conqueror all over again. If you don't get hull down, if you get caught in the side, you are easy prey. Also, the tank is a bit sluggish, to be honest. Yes, again, it's stock test drives, but it just doesn't really feel like it. And there's also a big gap just under the gun where there is just optics. And this is not Russian optics. Some fuel tanks in the side, we'll see how this works out. But again, you can easily shoot around them, quite literally. But a stunning level of detail here to the warheads of the AP FSDS shell, which is really strong. But the ammunition is kind of the very same as on the Chieftain Mark 10 from what have I seen. And also, you just have two machine guns. One is coaxial above the gun, or to the left up of the gun, and one in the turret, which is also penetratable with AP-HE. But I guess nobody's really firing AP-HE at this battle rating anymore. I think the last tank that does it is the T-55, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, we'll see about this. But also you can see, just to go back to it in a moment, the reload on the Challenger 1 is actually with 9.7, wow, 50% longer than on the Abrams and the Leopard 2K, so that will be an issue, despite having hash. Now let's talk about the ammunition in the comparison, and again we begin with the M1 Abrams, 127mm hash penetration. Not that useful at this battle rating from the front, I guess, but you know, there are situations where you can use it. The APDS is now, or the APFSDS is now what really kicks in. To make this clear, those are the top penetrating rounds of each category. So the Challenger 1 also has to deal with the APDS with stock penetration of 400mm. Normally, that is not bad, but you cannot go through the front of a T-64A even. So you have to shoot for the lower plate, hope that you hit it and penetrate it and ignite the ammunition. Against everything else, that shell is mostly good enough. So then also the T-64B has a really strong HE shell with 47mm of penetration. It has no hash therefore, but I guess that is kind of okay. The Challenger here has the strongest with 152mm, which is your average British 152mm, no, yeah, 120mm, 152mm penetrating hash round. Ooh, that went a bit weird. Then also every tank in this comparison features AP-FSDS, and you can see that the T-64B has the most outstanding, most powerful and fastest AP-FSDS with an astonishing 475mm of penetration against flat armor. And even the stock AP-FSDS, yes, it has stock AP-FSDS, is very strong and features even better penetration at an attack angle of 30 degrees. So the stock grind is here, well, so much easier again with the T-64B, what I expect from it, than with the Challenger 1. And I don't see the Challenger 1 actually being that good. I noticed it in the comment section of some of my videos on the forums from what my friends told me, that this tank got hyped into oblivion. And to be honest, it's certainly not a bad tank, but it has some glaring weaknesses, and the Chieftain Mark III once was the tank with the fastest reload for that kind of gun, and now the Challenger 1 just seems to lose it against its competitors. Talking about losing against competitors, here the MX-30B2 Brennus. I didn't make a hangar view, as everything that this tank gets as everything that this tank gets compared to the normal MX-30B2 is just an era package. But you know, the hull is still not very protected. It still has no stabilizer. The heat shell is still not the most effective one out there. And the reload is also okayish, but that's about it. I still think that it will suffer, but it also has a pretty good APF SDS, but this APF SDS is not very competitive compared to all the other 9.0s in the comparison. How it exactly will play out, how exactly the normalization throughout all the APF SDS shells will work out, how long the stock grind is for the respective tanks and the respective ammunition should be seen later on. But also I can tell you right away that the stock round with 360 millimeters of penetration without a stabilizer and so forth, despite having the nice 20 millimeter additional machine cannon, it makes this tank painful. And there you can see from time to time the reload mechanism again for the ready racks. It will be really interesting to see how it will work out for some other tanks, which tank will get this feature. And again, in this dev server preview, I have not talked about the graphical updates. I just did some driving here on the test drive. I did some flying with the Heinkel 177, which is an astonishing plane, but it has some lockup at 650 kilometers an hour, and it seems like you cannot rip the plane's wings in a dive because it will level out by itself. So it's a really strange plane. The tanks play out, but they should definitely get to 10.0. We need decompression, and as predicted, if it would go into the game as I feared it would when I first looked at the dev server, it would add again more compression, and it would lead to more compression and not to decompression, which again, those tanks could fill the battle ratings. They could give us an opportunity to de-stress the high tier stuff. At the moment it's mostly point and click. It's not really challenging. The upgraded tank usually wins up until the point that you meet a T-64B, which will penetrate you regardless of tank you are in. Abrams, really nice tank. The gun surprised me. It's really powerful. The Leopard 2K's stock heat FS shell is just outright monstrous. The T-64B, as I just said, stock shell, really great armor all around. Decent mobility, but not really competitive. But therefore, again, it has its armor. Challenger 1, ooh, that will be a sour one. But then the MX-30B2, it has a lower battle rating. I'm not quite sure, 8.7 or 8.3. It needs a lower battle rating, but again, it will change nothing in the meta. It still will feature, or it still will fight against 9.0s regardless, and to fight with this tank, especially stock, against an Abrams or a T-64B, no thank you. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this short preview of covering all the top tier tanks in more or less detail. Again, remember, everything is subject to change. It's just the first dev server that we saw, and I couldn't make it any shorter. I didn't want to make 5 videos out of it, and those are some short tank previews. Again and again, everything is subject to change, and for the sake of some tanks, I hope so. So again, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if you do. share it with your friends, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.